Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters on KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 11 a.m. Got a great show lined up for you today. You know, as a financial advisor, one of the things that I do when I sit down with people is figure out what their net worth is. I have what's called a fact finder, and we'll go through a checklist of different things. So when I get to the category that's called other, usually I'll ask them, do you have any thing that we haven't talked about yet? And this could be what I call mattress money, money that's literally under the mattress. So I've heard people say mason jars full of money buried in the backyard, or anything else, and that could be art, collectibles. We have with us today Jessica Khurana. She is a gemologist, and she will be talking about jewelry appraisers and jewelry appraisals. And so when people say, hey, I've got a collection of jewelry, and I'm like, do you really? How much is that worth? How do we figure out a value to that, a real value, and whether we should insure it, whether it should be something that's considered in that net worth calculation. So please stay tuned. Keep listening. Jessica is live in the studio with us today, and she will be joining us very, very shortly. But if you are a longtime listener, you know that I always reserve just the first few moments of the show to tell you a little bit about what's going on in Houston and the Gulf Coast area when it comes to financial literacy. So we're here in December, end of the year at 2019, about to turn 2020. Houston Money Week, we are actually, for partners, not having a meeting this week. We are going to meet this month. We will meet again in January. So we actually get a break there for partners. Leadership team, we did meet, but the partners are not meeting until that first meeting is going to be January 14th at 2 p.m. at the United Way of Greater Houston. To find out more about Houston Money Week, you can visit the website at houstonmoneyweek.org. If you'd like to find out how you can participate in Houston Money Week, you can always invite us out to have a speaker talk about financial literacy, or have a free workshop during April Financial Literacy Month, or even become a volunteer yourself by attending the meeting that I just talked about. Encourage you to go to houstonmoneyweek.org. That is a dynamic calendar. It is always changing, and you will see as we get closer and closer to April, as partners come on board, we're going to have more. I think last year it was more than 200 different free workshops and events for Houstonians across the Houston area and even the Gulf Coast. With that, just a few seminar topics that I have coming up here. We just did one on Saturday out at the Scarsdale Library on the teacher retirement system, and on Wednesday night we did Social Security basics. I will be doing a talk coming up for Alief Independent School District this Wednesday. This one is actually going to be on student loan repayment strategies, so it is offered to all employees of Alief Independent School District, teachers, administrative staff. If this is a topic, student loan repayment strategies, that's important to you, feel free to stop by. That is going to be from 5 to 6, and I believe it's at the main campus building there in Alief off of Cook Road. With that, I'm looking at Jessica here, and let me go ahead and turn your mic on. Jessica, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So usually I'll start the show the same way. I'll share some information about you with listeners. You are the owner of the company Houston Jewelry Appraisers.
Yes, I am.
And how long have you been doing this for?
I have been in the diamond and jewelry industry for about 20 years. Time flies.
Wow.
20 years, yes.
Wow. So one of the things that we mentioned earlier was when it comes to when I sit down with clients and we put together a financial plan, there's always that other column when we're calculating it.
Yes, and it's funny that, well, most of the jewelry appraisals that I do are called a retail replacement value appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of appraisal that someone would use to get an item insured. And that is the amount that that I would use to, if something gets lost or stolen, that's the amount that would be required to replace that item.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily the amount that would be required, that you would use in calculating someone's net worth, like you mentioned.
Right, right.
That would not be the cash equivalent. That's what would be to make someone whole if something is lost or stolen.
Right, right. And I know as somebody who's had their house broken into in the past, and you tried to actually claim something from your property and casualty guy, that you're never quite made whole. And it's super duper important to get.
If you have good insurance, yes, you can be made whole. But how would I say that if it's an item that you're going to replace, it doesn't mean that if you're going to necessarily go and sell it, that you're going to get that amount.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So
that's a little bit of something someone can be. It's a misunderstanding. Something like if someone says if you have a retail replacement value of $10,000, that doesn't mean that you're going to go just step out and just get $10,000 wherever you show up. If you go and try and sell that item.
So that's one of the things people should be aware of if they're trying to sell their jewelry. Who needs a jewelry appraisal?
I would say if you're going to get something insured, you should have an appraisal. I mean, every insurance company is going to ask for that appraisal.
So I gave the example earlier when my house got broken into, or when I'm talking to clients and they say, and I ask them, do you have any? Usually I'll use the number 10,000. I'm not even sure if I should use that. Do you have anything north of 10,000 that's collectible that we should put on your asset sheet? And often people will say, hey, I have a collection that was given to me by my grandmother or something like that. How do they know what the value of that is?
Well, I would say if someone has a collection, let's say a jewelry item with an accompanying appraisal that states $10,000, and it's a retail replacement value of $10,000, they should not be listing it as an asset that is worth $10,000. They should have an appraisal that is a fair market value appraisal, not a retail replacement value appraisal, that to list it as an actual asset.
So that when you say that, two different
types of appraisals.
Two different types of appraisals, two different numbers.
Very different numbers. That
we need to be aware of as we're calculating and keeping track of this.
Very different definitions of value.
Can't the jeweler do the appraisal for him, the person that sold him the...
I would say no, because that would be an interested party. A jeweler is someone who is selling them the item or someone who has an interest in purchasing the item from them.
Right.
So they have a reason to either inflate that number or to deflate that number.
So a conflict of interest there.
Very conflicted interest.
So I'm thinking of these shows we see, the pawnbrokers and stuff, where they're you walk in and they're not going to give you the very best price because they're also possibly going to try to purchase it from you.
Well, I would say that is TV. They
right.
have a reason to, and I don't want to burst your bubble, but it is TV. It's a little bit dramatic. They have a reason to make it dramatic for viewership, but they have a reason to either inflate it or deflate it to suit their own interests. And if you go to an appraiser, they have as long as it's an uninterested appraiser, they have a reason to, they don't have a reason to move that number in either direction.
So when we're talking about insurance companies wanting to know a value of something, bringing in a disinterested third party as opposed to someone who's got skin in the game or is trying, is super duper important. How does jewelry insurance work?
Well, you can always have something listed as a separate rider with your homeowner's insurance, but I usually suggest that you go with a company that specializes only in jewelry insurance, because I would want to have I wouldn't want to have a claim that for a jewelry item to affect my relationship with my entire homeowner's insurance, with that entire company. I'd like to keep them completely separate. I like to refer it church and state, keep them completely separate.
So they can't see me shaking my head yes, but I'm shaking my head yes.
Completely separate.
So that's important. I didn't even know that was an option. So you're telling us that there are insurance companies that specialize just in the jewelry replacement. I guess that makes sense. I had an artist on here recently, or no, not on the show, but at one of my clients, they had an art gallery, and there was an insurance company that specialized in just insuring the art from the studio to the gallery and back, and so there's a specialty for many of the things that we didn't think about. If you have a jewelry collection, then going out and finding one of these companies that just insure jewelry is probably a good way to go.
Yes, I don't want to endorse a specific company, but a quick internet search would bring you to the right place.
Absolutely, I didn't even know that existed.
There are a couple of key major players, and it would take you exactly to the right place.
How can a jewelry appraisal save me money on jewelry insurance?
Okay, so if you do go with one of those companies that specializes in jewelry insurance, once you write the policy, every year, well, first you have to understand how the policy works. When your premium is based on the value of the item. So let's say you get an appraisal that we'll go with that number, $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So your premiums will be based on that number, $10,000. Every year, they will raise that amount by a certain percentage. But that percentage will not necessarily be based on the market value. It's a set percentage. So that means your premiums will go up a little bit every single year. That amount might leave the market behind. So it will just go up and up and up. And if you get it reappraised, then that means it might keep it lower and save you money on your premiums.
That sounds very similar to even when people have PMI insurance on their home, and you only have to have it if you have less than 20% equity. Nobody's going to come and tell you, hey, if you reappraise it, you can get rid of it. It's going to save you money. This is one of those things where the premiums are going to just keep going up. If it doesn't keep track of what the actual fair market value at this time, real time, then you're going to pay a higher premium. I can see where that would make a big difference.
I'm going to nod and defer to your expertise on that subject.
How much does insurance cost for jewelry? Is that something that's expensive? Or?
We'll stick to that number, $10,000. It can be a couple $100 per year. It's not necessarily that expensive.
Should you have your appraisals updated?
As I said, to keep those premiums low, yes.
So how often would you think would be a good?
Every 2 years.
So that makes sense to me. Just if it's something that's north of $10,000 and it's going to be on your assets, having it reappraised is not going to hurt, and it might keep the premiums down.
I would say also that's one of the things that people can. It's also a misunderstanding is that people think that having a large number listed as a value on their insurance is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Most jewelry insurance is a replacement policy. So having a detailed appraisal, their insurance is required to replace what is detailed on that appraisal. It's actually in your best interest to have a lower number on that appraisal, because the insurance company is required to replace what is detailed on that appraisal. They have to replace what is there.
Right.
So having a large number listed there is actually not in your best interest, because your premiums are based on that number.
So that's counterintuitive to what people would think if they walked in.
Exactly. So the lower that number is, of course, there's a limit. You can't have it ridiculously low, because in most insurance companies, they will say, no, I'm sorry, we can't replace this. We can't write this policy based on that number. We can't. Right. But it's actually in your best interest to have that number low. So no one actually goes and says, no, I'm sorry, I want to pay more for my insurance, or they can increase bidding higher.
Right,
no, I'm sorry, I don't want to pay $300 a month for my insurance. I want to pay $500 for
Right. Nobody's standing in line raising their hand like, sure, make my premiums higher.
No. So it's actually in your best interest to have a more conservative number on their appraisal than a higher number.
Let's pivot for a moment and talk about some of the, I know you've been doing this for years. You're actually right in kind of the Galleria area here in Houston.
Yes, I am.
So for Houstonians, you've had many clients over the years. Are there any stories that come to mind where you've helped clients out that kind of stick out to you?
Are we still sticking to the subject of insurance?
You can no. you can talk about whatever you want. We're wide open here.
I'm a helpful person. We've helped quite a few people. Well, I do all types of consultations. I do offer free consultations for clients coming in looking. They just have questions. Is what I have, does it have any sort of value? I have.
How about the opposite of that? How about I ask you any of the good stories? How about ones where you've had to burst the bubble of somebody walking in there thinking that they've got, the crown jewels or something?
That happens all the time. Burning down dreams is like a pastime for me. Yes. Well, I have a really nice story of. I have a few clients where their job is. They actually empty out the homes of hoarders. As that is their job, and part of their deal is they get to keep the contents of the homes in exchange for making the homes ready for sale.
Right.
So they just go through all of this. I don't even want to imagine what they have to go through. Piles and piles of junk, and they just put together a box of everything that resembles jewelry and bring it to me to go through.
Oh, that's fun.
The smell, it is highly unpleasant. They take full advantage of this free consultation service that I offer. And there was this time we went through a box. It was all mostly just junk, and then at the bottom of this box there was a $10,000 emerald.
Holy smokes.
Yes, this loose emerald, a Colombian emerald, $10,000.
Wow.
Made their day.
Wow.
So, and it was in the bottom of this brown box that actually had holes in it, and there was a chance that even walking up to my office, they could have dropped that emerald anywhere.
It could have just fallen out.
In the parking lot, anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they lined their boxes with plastic after that.
They're probably walking in with like tongs and radioactive suits and that sort of thing, making sure not to lose the treasures that are hidden inside the houses there. That's inspiring for anybody who's who
wants to take up the profession of cleaning out hoarders' homes.
Yes.
Don't give up hope.
It's a short line of people who are signing up for that, but they didn't
smell what I smelled. Yeah. So if you're willing to do it, go ahead.
More power to you. Well, I know that a lot of people, even just, garage sales and estate sales and that sort of things, they're looking for treasure. How often do you have people come in where they think they've got something very valuable and it's either costume jewelry that there's no value, or
all the time. All the time.
Yes.
All the time.
That's you're shaking your head. Yes, for listeners who can't see this, you said yes.
Yes.
All the time. Let's go back to some of the other questions I had for you. What type of jewelry do you think holds its value the best?
I would say if you're looking to purchase something that's going to hold value, I would go with buying something like a solitaire, something that doesn't contain too many individual little stones or too much workmanship. Because when it comes to reselling jewelry, most labor, like setting stones or actual labor that's put into jewelry, loses value when it comes to reselling. So individual stones, one large stone as opposed to multiple small stones, is the way to go.
I'm making notes here. Individual stones as opposed to
Yes.
a large,
Individual
those
stones.
giant.
One single stone instead of multiple little stones.
Okay.
So one single 1 carat stone as opposed to 5 little stones that all add up to 1 carat is the better way to go.
Is the way to go. Would you consider jewelry to be a good investment?
Because this is the Money Matters show, right?
Right, that's right.
I would say definitely not.
Okay.
If you are looking for an investment, jewelry is not the way to go. If you buy jewelry because you love jewelry. It is a luxury product. It is not an investment, but as you would traditionally think of an investment.
Right.
Is buying gold an investment? It could be, but jewelry for most retail customers, 99% of retail clients it's not an investment.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think that's good advice. Those are considered hard assets. Anything when somebody tells me they have collectibles, whether it's art or jewelry, the expectation that is there is usually not the case. It just depends. I do have clients that actually have like gold bullion that they keep, and typically those are the people that think the sky is falling and that they have to prepare for the they have to prepare for the end times, or the market's going to crash, or
gold bullion, it could work out.
I'm the kind of guy I would say, well, buy stock in the mining companies and not hold it. I'm always those things. Well, what if somebody breaks into your house and they take your gold your gold coins that you have there hidden and all of that?
I don't know. I got a pretty fancy safe. And
okay.
The gold has worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah. So that's.
I got the fancy safe though.
You have to have the fancy safe to be able to. When it comes to your network and people that you work with, I know we mentioned before, kind of off the air, that you have worked with estate planning attorneys before.
Mm-hmm.
Why would an estate planning attorney be interested in jewelry appraisal?
Because they're assets, and people want to see who's going to get what, and it does make things work much smoother when you have that all planned out. And surviving family members, they do want to know who gets what, and it does help to smooth it out, knowing the cash equivalent or the property equivalent of these items.
I can see where that would be very valuable. Like even as I was telling you, as a financial advisor, when they told me, "Oh, I've got this," I have no idea. I'm like a deer in headlights. I'm like, okay, even when
it's also very unfair if you're looking at, like, you have a retail replacement value appraisal. You're looking at something that has a piece of paper that says this is worth $30,000, and you're comparing it to actual cash or actual real property. Having a fair market value appraisal, which is what we would use for estate planning, is much more fair and valuable.
Now, I know with collectibles that there's also emotional value or an emotional attachment. Do you hear a lot of?
I am not an expert on valuing that part.
Do you hear a lot of stories where people will come in and?
Yes, and that's when I turn to deer in headlights. I try my best, but that's.
Usually, everybody's got a good story, and there's always going to be something attached to that.
Yes, and I try.
But
it's not my expertise.
you're like
I try.
What other thing, when it comes to people trying to get fair value when they're selling the jewelry, what are some of those biggest roadblocks that people are at risk of?
I would say the biggest roadblocks is themselves. They really have they can be misled by the industry themselves. Like, they have an overblown image of what the items are worth because of these retail replacement value appraisals, because even for myself, when I write a retail replacement value appraisal, I have to take into consideration the value of the labor that it takes to create these items, because I have to consider that this item has to be recreated to make this person whole if something is lost or stolen.
And that's a craft. That's
Yes,
not a typical person can put together.
Yes. And if this has to be replaced, this is what it's going to take. But if this item is, someone has to turn around and resell this item, all that is worth nothing, because if they're going to sell this item to a jeweler, then this is going to be pretty much destroyed and taken apart for pieces.
Right.
Sure, a person could go ahead and resell something on eBay. They could resell something, directly to another person, but there are risks involved with that. eBay is a little bit dangerous for selling an item. eBay is very protective of the buyer as opposed to the seller.
Right.
And for a jeweler or a regular seller on eBay, a person, they can afford to take that sort of risk. But I've heard quite a few stories from individuals or even jewelers themselves who sell on eBay about people who buy something on eBay and then return an item after having switched out stones or even switched out the entire piece, and then demand a refund, and they get that refund. And it's okay if you're selling 10 items, you can afford to spread that profit off around all those 10 items and afford to take a loss. But if you're selling that one item,
right,
that's a big loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes it is the safest and easiest thing just to liquidate a piece with a jeweler and just take the payment for just the materials.
It's matching up the time when you want to get paid. How much time do you have?
Yes, and how much risk you can take.
Those are all real things. And when I ask people to value even their homes, and say, I'm not asking you to sell your home, but if you had to, and it was a fire sale and you weren't able to hold out for market value, what would you estimate it's worth? That it's two different situations there. Talk a little bit.
In a perfect world versus reality.
Right. Talk a little bit about...
Those two might overlap one day, but it's no guarantee.
Sometimes they don't. What are some of the biggest scams out there that people fall for in the jewelry industry?
There are tons of scams out there, but the one that I see people falling for consistently all the time, is the cruise ship one.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Really?
No. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So a lot of people purchase jewelry when they're on vacation, when they take a cruise. They buy overpriced items while on vacation in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Like very, very, very overpriced jewelry. And then they get back into the States and they find that it's impossible to return. Completely impossible. And they make appointments with me. They are coming, I'd say at least once a week. I have someone coming into my office looking for a way to return these items.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just don't understand how they just keep on falling for it. Keep on falling for it. Over and over and over again.
So this is such a common thing that you see this almost on a weekly basis.
Almost
where people
on a weekly basis, yes.
And okay, well that's a good one. That's probably why I haven't seen it. I haven't been on a cruise. So.
Yes.
But and if I did, I don't know if I would be buying jewelry. But if I did,
well, okay. But the thing is also these companies in the Caribbean, they offer financing. So in-store financing. I had someone a couple of months ago. They were looking at the possibility of bankruptcy because they opened up a line of credit in a store in the Caribbean, almost $100,000. They were going to lose their house.
Oh my goodness!
And they couldn't do anything about it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com.
drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.